All right, folks, welcome back to Sub2 Investor. My name is Hans, and in this episode, I'm breaking down an actual Subject to deal that I closed and which we currently hold in our portfolio today. You're going to see how we took a low equity deal that a wholesaler could not wholesale and how we are making money with it, and it's an awesome deal. Now, this was my third Subject to deal that I closed. This is part of the Real Sub2 Deal Breakdown series where I'm going through actual deals, Subject to deals, and creative finance deals that I've closed, showing you the ins and outs from how we marketed to find the deal, to how we communicated with the seller, to how we wrote the contracts, closed the transaction, and what we did with it on the back end to make profit. So check out the series if you haven't already. Now, in this episode, it's cool to see how we are actually a little bit in the deal on the front end, but still our cash on cash return is like 86% or something crazy like that. This is one of our deals that cash flows the highest. And so stay tuned to find out how we made that happen. Now, this deal, like I said, was a failed wholesale deal. Okay, now, how do you market to find good Subject to deals? Well, there's a plethora of ways that you can do that. One particular marketing channel for Subject to deals in particular is what I call the failed wholesale list or the expired wholesale list. Many of you are familiar with expired listings that you can pull from the MLS. Those were houses that were listed on the market with a realtor but expired. So then you can reach out to the sellers to see if a Subject to offer would work for them. Well, if you spend some time getting on all of the wholesalers in your local market, their lists, you can see all the properties that they send out on a daily or weekly basis. You can compile that list or have a VA compile that list for you. And then you can see if those houses actually sell after a month or so. And if they don't, then you can go to the seller directly, as long as it's no longer under contract, and market to those sellers to see if a Sub2 offer would work for them. Now, this deal is what I consider a failed wholesale deal, even though a wholesaler brought it to me directly. And basically they said, I can't do anything with this deal. If you can do something with it, awesome, just pay me a referral fee. Check out the previous video to see my whole communication and relationship with that wholesaler and how I actually got this deal from that wholesaler in the previous episode of this breakdown series. But this house, the mortgage balance on it was $135,000. Now, this house, after rehab, and it needed some extensive rehab, I'll show you what we put into it, but any retail rehabber who rehabs and flips as their business model would probably have put somewhere in the realm of $40K into the rehab of this property. So they would have been all in, and some closing costs, lender fees. Let's just call that $5,000. 140 plus 40 would have been 180. And this house, the ARV was only probably 190. So as you can see, any flipper would be all in $180,000 and only being able to sell it for 190. That doesn't leave any room for profit or for their listing agent's commission or closing concessions or closing costs. This is definitely a no deal for a flipper. But so I would consider this a low equity deal because there's literally $10,000 of apparent equity. Now, if you subtract the closing costs and the listing agent fees, there's really $0 of equity. There might even be negative equity in this particular deal. So we came in and we offered Subject to, and this seller was definitely receptive. I remember talking to him and saying, hey, we can offer you more than most investors who are coming in here and giving you these lowball cash offers somewhere in the realm of $100,000 or $105,000 were the kind of cash offers he was getting. I can offer you full value or even above value. And he was like, well, how do you do that? And I said, I kind of have an edge on my competition in the fact that I can actually take over your mortgage payments, get you a little cash to send you on your way, and I'll make money on this house as a rental or something like that. Over time, I'll eventually make a profit on it. Now, the fact is I usually try to make a profit a lot sooner than that, but the bulk of my profit is made by holding these properties over time. So the loan balance was 135, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Let's start with the purchase price of this deal. So the loan balance was 135, but he wanted some cash. So we ended up offering 142,500 for the deal. And the way that we got there was the loan balance of 135, and he wanted cash to walk away. Now, this is a nice part of town that appreciates, and it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, full basement, perfect starter house. So he knew that he had something desirable, and he wanted like $10,000. We settled at $7,500. And really, we were able to do this because he had gotten a loan modification. He was behind in arrears by like $15,000. They actually modified the entire loan, and he began afresh with a $135,000 balance. So for that effort, we said we can give you $7,500. Oops. And so total price that we offered on the HUD, $142,500. Now, the monthly payment, PITI, plus mortgage insurance, because it was FHA, was $823 a month. And get this, the best part about this deal, in my opinion, is the interest rate. This was during the depths of COVID when interest rates were at a bottom low. He had a 2.75 interest rate, okay? Friggin' amazing interest rate. Just, this is free money right here, okay? Given market appreciation and inflation, this is free money. Amazing. And then we had some closing costs. So closing costs, roughly, we'll call it $1,500. So here are the numbers on the front end, okay? Now, this house, man, it had overgrown grass in the backyard. It was literally 5 feet tall. It was super gross. He had a dog that he never cleaned any of the dog hair. Floors needed to be refinished. The house needed to be painted, and the basement was pretty gross, so we needed to do something to that. Clean up the outside, power wash the entire house, plant some grass. We ended up doing a somewhat extensive rehab. Now, again, this is according to my standards of extensive rehab. Again, I don't like doing rehabs. It's not my business model. We ended up putting about $20,000 into rehabbing this property, and in my opinion, that's a pretty decent sized rehab. So we dumped 20 grand into the rehab. All right, now you might be asking me, how did you come up with the $7,500 to give to the seller, the $1,500 in closing costs, the $20,000 in rehab funds? And the answer to that is a private money lender who lent us the funds to do this. And for this one, the cost for the funds, we'll just call it the gap funding, I think cost us $1,500. We had about $3,000 of holding costs. That includes utilities and mortgage payments. So $3,000 for holding. All right, so if you add all of our out-of-pocket expenses, that is $7,500, the $1,500 closing, the $20,000 rehab, the gap funding costs, and the holding costs, you have a total cash out-of-pocket amount of $33,500. So we'll call this total cash $33,500 This is money required to get this deal done. Now, what we decided to do is sell this property on a contract for deed, also known as a land contract. And here's how we made our money. We're basically going to recoup some money on a down payment from our buyer. We're going to arbitrage this interest rate to create cash flow. And then we are going to sell the house for more than we bought it for to create an equity spread. So we found a buyer who was very, very excited to buy this property. They couldn't qualify for a bank loan. And so we sold it to them on a contract for deed for $190,000. So we sold it for, get this, market value, even though we only put $20K into the rehab, right? So this is the beautiful thing about seller financing. When you sell on terms as well, the value that you're providing, which is an amazing value to folks who can't qualify for traditional mortgage, an amazing value, you're able to put less money into a rehab because that buyer is going to come in and do a lot of the work themselves because they've been given an opportunity to own a house without qualifying through a lender. So we sold it for $190,000 and we collected a down payment of $25,000. So our contract for deed down payment was $25,000. The monthly payment that they're paying us is $1,450 a month. The interest rate that they are being charged is 7.9%. The contract for deed rate, 7.9%. So let's analyze the profit on this deal and the cash-on-cash return. First of all, on any subject to deal, one of the first things that I want to know is how much cash am I going to need to shell out of pocket on this deal. In this case, it was $33,500, which is kind of a lot of money. That's on the higher side of subject to deals. Usually we're no more than $15,000 in a deal, which makes it extremely easy to recoup most or all of that money on a down payment from a lease option or a contract for deed buyer. However, on this particular deal, this was a little bit higher. This was a nice area, so we knew we were going to be able to get a pretty nice size down payment. Okay, so that's the first thing that I want to know. And so if we take a look at the difference between $33,500, our total cash out of pocket, and the $25,000 down payment that we got, that right there is the difference of $8,500. So we are negative. So let's just call this the net front end profit. It's actually negative. So our front end profit on this deal is negative $8,500. So we're actually out of cash up front on this deal, which may seem like a bad thing, but to put this into perspective, if you're going to buy a rental property and you're going to go about it the conventional way, well, you're going to go find a property, you're going to buy it for $190,000, and you're going to put at least 20%, maybe 25 or 30% down if it's an investor loan. So right away, you are close to $50,000 out of pocket just to hold a rental property, okay? I am only $8,500 out of pocket, which is definitely less than 10% of the value, more like 5%. Here's the other crazy thing. This for a rental property, you'd be lucky to score like $200 net cash flow after capital expenditures, maintenance, property management, vacancies, property taxes, insurance, all the things you have to do and pay as a landlord. Our cash flow, so the front end profit is negative, but our cash flow is pretty bonkers. It's the difference between the interest rate arbitrage, between what we're paying on our interest rate and what we're charging. So that's the difference between $823 and $1,450, which results in $627 of cash flow every single month. All right, and then finally, we'll talk about our back-end payment, which is going to be the difference between our buyer's loan balance, which you have 190 minus 125. That's going to be, let's see if I can math, 165. So their balance minus our balance of 135 means an immediate back-end spread of $30,000. So if at month one they were to just sell the house, we would have netted $30,000 plus that month of cash flow. And then I guess you would subtract this $8,500 to give us our total profit on the deal, which would then have been, close to $31,000, which is more than a flipper could have made on this deal or any wholesaler. I'm sorry, I meant $21,000. However, if this buyer remains in the property and makes payments for 10 years, which is the average length for a non-qualified mortgage or installment sale, then we are actually going to make, after 10 years of cash flowing at $627 a month, and then our back end kind of adjusts because we have an amortization schedule, which is paid down a little bit sooner than their amortization schedule is paid down. After 10 years, and I'll show this on a separate video, our 10-year projected profit is actually just about $100,000, which is awesome for a deal with virtually no equity. So let's calculate now the cash on cash return, because I don't love being negative in a deal on the front end. However, you got to put this into perspective. In my mind, it is totally worth it to be that much in a deal up front because, well, first of all, I like to, if I am going to be into a deal, I like to make all of that money back within about a year, is as long as I like to go. So if you take $8,500 and divide it by 627, which is our monthly cash flow, you actually get to, here, let's just do it down here. So 8,500, and if you divide that by our cash flow, that comes out to be about 13 and a half months it's going to take me to make back all of my money. And guess what, guys? It's been longer than that now. So I've already made back all of my money on this deal, which means everything I make from this point on is pure profit, okay? So to figure out the cash on cash return, if I'm $8,500 into the deal, but I'm making $627 a month, well, then I'm making $627 annualized. If I multiply that by 12, what that comes out to be is $7,524. So I'm making this every single year in cash flow, just about $7,500 a year in cash flow. And if you divide this number by how much you're actually in the deal, so we'll just divide that by $8,500, that'll give you the cash on cash percentage return of this investment right here, which comes out to be 88.51%. So 88.51% is our cash on cash, oops, there we go again, our cash on cash return, right? Which obviously is an insanely high return, all right? You don't find ROIs like this in very many places, but in real estate, and in particular in creative finance real estate, it's a place where you can find these kinds of returns. I personally like an infinite cash on cash return. I am willing to settle with an 88.5 cash on cash return pretty much any day of the week, as long as I can find the gap funding in order to get the deal done and then recoup all or most of my money. Ideally, I like to make money on the front end of a deal. So the cool thing about this whole model here is that really it's an attainable model, guys. I mean, nothing that I did in this deal was spectacular or magnificent. You know, I did swing some hammers. We ran over budget. I power washed the house and did some other things like planted grass seed. But, you know, that was a learning experience and basically free education on how to use a power washer, right? Other than that, I mean, I would do this deal all day long, multiple times, and just stack that cash flow. This is a good cash flowing deal. We, I think, average probably about $400, maybe a little bit north of that, 425 on average for most of the deals that we do like this. So this one was definitely exceptional. And that has to do with this low interest rate and charging a high interest rate to just make that spread. So if you haven't begun doing creative finance yet, and if you're looking to get into the real estate game, looking to build a portfolio that cash flows so that you can get out of your 9 to 5 day job and start becoming financially independent and building wealth for the long term, then you can, this is a model that's very reduplicatable and attainable. Let me know in the comments what questions you have about it, what things are not clear to you about what happened in this transaction, and is there anything that you would have done differently, which I can learn from. I'm sure there is, so let me know in the comments below. And please like and share this video, subscribe. This is a new channel. I'm trying to provide as much free, valuable content as I possibly can so that you can, sink your teeth into, subject to, and really learn the ins and outs, the nitty-gritty of somebody like myself who's not a huge guru who has a product to sell. I'm just a normal investor in my local market trying to build a portfolio as fast as I can. So if you found this content valuable, please like it and subscribe. That would do me a huge favor, and I will see you on the next one.